Good evening, folks. 33 years in 31 days. Day 22. Looking at 2011. Let's see who we've got in here. Jenny, good evening. Good to have you again. Ruth, hi. Good evening. Welcome along. It says here I've got Andrew as well. Good evening. It says I've got 10 people watching. I've got Andrew on Facebook, Ruth and Jenny on Perry/Twitter, and again, if I keep knocking this table, it's going to drive everybody mad. I do tend to do a lot of that, and because I've got my hands underneath this little table that the computer's sat on, I keep banging it. Sorry. Must try harder. Replay viewers, welcome along. Thank you for coming and having a look to see what 33 years in 31 days is all about. Big year in my career and for my future career and how it changed, really. Quite astonishing when I think about it, when I look back. 2011. Let's just make sure that I don't forget anything before I start. Right, okay, 2011. The picture is I'm on Facebook. I've got Facebook. Probably 2009, something like that. My attention was drawn to Twitter. Everybody was going on about Twitter. What's all this Twitter thing? I don't understand it. Don't get it. I went and had a look. I had a look at it, and I went, don't get it. Don't understand it. I can do everything that I can do on Twitter on Facebook, but on Facebook I can do more. Why would I do that? Didn't even think, give it a second thought, left it. But in 2011, there I was minding my own business, and I stumbled. I don't even know how, to this day I don't know how I did it or why, but I stumbled across a blog. I think he was called Response Plod. It might have been called Response Plod. And Response Plod had wrote a blog, and I read his blog, and it talked about his experiences and what was happening to him as a response cop and how he felt and things that were going on around the country. That led me to say, oh, look, he's got a Twitter account. What's all that about? So I looked at his Twitter account and thought, oh, he talks a bit about bits and pieces on there as well. That looks interesting. Wheels started to turn. And I thought, well, you know what? Actually, I'm a custody sergeant, and this is a hidden role. Unless you come into custody, nobody really knows what the custody sergeant does, what we're about, some of the things that we see and experience. There was a big narrative at the time, at the moment, at that time, that you sort of thought, organisation, the police top end were saying, policing's like this. And you're like, no, it's not. The policing, the police and the way that we were being promoted by our own organisations across the country bore no reflection in many ways to what I was experiencing, what many of the cops were experiencing at the grassroots level. I thought, what a great opportunity if I were to sign up to Twitter and start doing stuff as a custody sergeant. That would be interesting. Maybe I could run a blog as well. The rest is history, really. But in March 2011, I signed up to Twitter as the custody sergeant. And I put a blog alongside it. And I think I called it, I don't know, I think it went through a name, it might have gone through a name change at one point, but it was called the Custody Record, because the custody sergeant writes on the custody record. And it was hosted at WordPress, and I started writing blogs. And I was anonymous. So nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew what I was doing. I was just for all intents and purposes, I could have been a bus driver pretending to be a custody sergeant for what people knew. But I portrayed myself as a police officer, portrayed myself anonymously, didn't give away my force, and my sole intention was to shine a light on some of the work that custody sergeants do, shine a light on some of the stuff that we have to deal with, shine a light and my own perspective on some of the national things that were going on that I wanted to sort of speak out about. But never, ever having, if you've watched all these broadcasts, you know how I went through the discipline process with other officers and struggled massively with whether I should whistleblow or not. But principles have always come to the front, either immediately or a short time later. Have been, I'm not putting my career on the line for somebody who can't behave. And so my intention was never to embarrass myself, never to embarrass the force, never to put myself in a position where I was going to be finding myself getting into trouble, but just being anonymous. Being anonymous protected me. Being anonymous protected the force, and being anonymous protected the things that I was writing about, because I could have been anywhere in the country. If people knew that I was in Cheshire and people knew that I worked for Cheshire Constabulary, well then, when I talk about a certain individual coming in for assaulting their partner or whatever, people might be able to join the dots and go, he's talking about me. Chances of them seeing it, really slim, but there's always that off chance. So it was anonymous, and that's how it was. And it took me a little bit by surprise, actually, because my follower count started to grow quite quickly. And there's something quite intoxicating about Twitter and stuff when you start getting follows from people and you think, people are following me. And then you get an alert on your phone and it says, your blog's getting lots of traffic. Hi, Corinda, good evening. And you think, my blog's getting lots of traffic and lots of reads, and people are reading what I'm writing. This is amazing. It's quite intoxicating that we are able to sort of engender that sort of reaction from other people. You think, wow, this is amazing, the rest of it. And my follower count get going, and I was getting other cops around the country and members of the public, and then suddenly it started to change. And getting to sort of 300, 400. I had my own Twitter account. When I looked in 2009, I set up a Twitter account. And between 2009 and 2011, I'd amassed a massive following of about 14 people, most of which whom I knew. But then I go on Twitter as the custody sergeant, and within months I'm at 400. I'm like, crikey. Now that made me nervous. That made me nervous because I was suddenly thinking, wait a minute, I'm anonymous. I'm trying to be clever about what I'm doing here and trying to be careful about what I'm doing here, but there are people watching me, and who wants to trip me up? And the big key moment that arrived for me was when I was followed by a chap called Sean O'Neill. And his following of my account made me panic. Sean O'Neill was the chief crime correspondent for the Times newspaper. And I suddenly thought, shit, if anybody wants to try and trip me up, particularly with all the stuff that had gone on with Richard Horton and the Nightjack blog and how he'd been hacked and how he had been sort of investigated by newspapers most inappropriately and all the rest of it. I'm thinking, what's going to happen to me and all the rest of it, and who's going to come after me? And I'm going to, I've got a mortgage and I've got a wife, I've got 3 kids, I can't afford to jeopardize my career. I panicked that Sean O'Neill was following me. But I stuck with it just for a while. to see, and it turned out that I didn't really have a problem. But then I had MPs following me, and more journalists, and lawyers, and barristers, and all sorts of other people, and we would have debates, and sometimes on Twitter in the early days, I was quite argumentative, and I chilled over a period of time. But I at times I'd be quite argumentative with people, and I think I was a little bit edgy, and I think that's the thing that people tend to like. If you're like I am now, you're a bit sort of run of the mill and a bit normal, and well, then the likelihood of you gaining more and more followers is less so. But if you're edgy and you're pushing the buttons of people and really treading the knife edge, more and more people are going to follow you. As you go on in life with Twitter, you suddenly realize it's not about followers, it's about engagement and relationships with the people that do follow you, rather than a huge number that means nothing. I'd rather have 10 people that follow me that are completely engaged and engage with what I do and appreciate what I do and talk to me and we have conversations, than 30,000 who haven't got the first clue who I am and just followed me because they thought they would, and they never see anything that I post. So I panicked, but I stuck with it, and my follower count continued to grow. And it really is, it's like a drug. When you first get going on Twitter and you start picking up lots of followers like that, you think, crikey. And I remember writing a blog called Social Media and the Police. And I wrote the blog and I posted it. And in another life, I used to be involved with an online organization that was to do with flight simulators. And one of the guys that I know very well there sent me a message that morning and said, your tweet with that blog has just been retweeted by, and I can't remember his name. He's the guy that wrote Father Ted. He's quite outspoken now, even more than he was then. Graham, somebody will tell me in the comments. Try and Linehan, Graham Linehan, something like that. He retweeted it. Now that morning, I was going out with a friend to Middlewich, not to work, but to pick up the narrowboat and move the narrowboat. And on the way to Middlewich in the car, my phone was going ping, 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 ping. It was being retweeted all over the place. Panic, because you think, blimey, if something's really, really popular like that, I've either put my foot completely in it and everybody's going, ha, 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 and I think it's a disaster waiting to happen, or it was actually really good. I thought the former. But I got there and I got like 300 retweets on something, and you go, wow, in one breath, and oh my God, what's going to go wrong here with the other? But that got a huge read and a huge number of retweets and stuff, and that's Ruth's got in there, Graham Linehan. I think he's quite outspoken now about transgender and things. His posts don't come onto my timeline very much at all. But at the time, I was thrilled. He's the guy that wrote Father Ted. I think Father Ted's brilliant. Anyway. Lots of nervousness, lots of panic, and lots of very uncertain times in those early days with social media, as I found my feet and found my way and started blogging and enjoyed blogging, and starting to debate with people, talk with people, and sometimes downright argue. I had a proper fallout with those of you that may or may not know him, called David Alan Green. He's on Twitter still now. Proper fallout with him, and didn't like what he was saying about the police, didn't like the way that he spoke to me on Twitter. He didn't like the way that I challenged and spoke to him and all this of it. To cut a very long story short, we unfollowed one another, and it was, I felt quite angry and about it. And on reflection, some 12 months later, probably not 12 months, but some 6 months later or so, I sent him an email and said that, and I think it was an email or a direct message. I think it was an email, and I said Olive Branch, and I said that just because I disagreed with his point of view didn't mean that his points were invalid. They were relevant points, and da. And I have followed him and me ever since. But there was a time where I was quite bull in a china shop sort of stuff with Twitter. But there we go. That was it. I was on Twitter and going, and here I am 10 years later, still as a police officer, just not long to go now, but still as a police officer on Twitter. And the journey between there and now is incredible, and something that I would never have imagined. And there's been a lot of upset and a lot of ill feeling along the way. And I've been, in some cases, I've been treated really well, and in other cases, I've been treated appallingly. But I've kept going. But more about social as we go through the next 10 years of these broadcasts. The only other thing that I've got for 2011 is that, and I don't know why they did this, but that in the police, there are a number of awards that you can get. You can get the Queen's Police Medal if you do something really brilliant. You can get OBEs and things if you're nominated and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing that you do get, subject to meeting the criteria, is the Police Long Service and Good Conduct Medal. And the Chief Constable has to sign that off and send it to the Home Secretary saying, this officer is deserving of this award, and it was always, when I joined the job, the Long Service and Good Conduct Medal came at 22 years service. Why it changed, I don't really know, but it changed around about that point or just before to 20 years. So I was expecting, because I'd basically still been good conduct and was still there and not been sacked, I was expecting to be picking up that medal in 2013. However, in 2011, I was going to get it because they brought it forward to 20 years service, not 22. And I was notified that it was going to be awarded. There was going to be a ceremony at headquarters. The chief constable at the time was a guy called David Watton. And he had replaced Mr. Fahy. And he was a bit like the David Wilmot of Greater Manchester Police in my early career. He was very grey, nothing really. He wasn't dynamic or this huge personality. He was just the chief, and you never saw him and you never heard of him in custody. That was that. But the award was given. I'm not sure actually if I've got a photograph. Let me just, while we're talking, let's just see if because I've had so few photographs just recently that I've forgotten to actually look. But I'm not sure if I've got a photograph somewhere of that day. Find the right folder. I did that the other day when I was looking through here. I was so busy looking at stuff that I didn't realise I was looking in the wrong folder. Can't see it. I did have one, but I wonder where it's gone. No, it's not there. So you'll have to do without it. But the long service medal was awarded, and they said there's going to be this event at headquarters. You're invited to come along. Da 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 da. So I thought, right. Now, what I'm going to do now is take you straight back to 2005, because if you remember from 2005, I showed you a photograph where we were sworn in. We met Mr. Fari on the first day. On the Wednesday or Thursday that week, we were sworn in. And we're all in blue woolly NATO sweaters. All the transferees were in NATO sweaters, not in tunics, we're in jumpers. Why? Cheshire Police had abandoned issuing tunics to police officers. So I didn't have one. I didn't have a tunic. So I looked at this thing and I thought, wait a minute, this is going to be a presentation evening where I'm going to get awarded my medal. I need a tunic. Now, the process is that because you've not been issued with tunics, uniform stores carry a whole selection of tunics, and you can go down, get one that fits, and borrow it, basically. So you take it away, you use it for what you need it for, and then you give it back. So I spoke to stores and I went down to see them, and they fitted me up with a tunic and said, yep, there you go, that one fits. So I said, that's lovely. I said, but I'll need one with chevrons on because I'm a sergeant. Pause. Oh, well, we've only got a few that have with sergeant stripes on, and none of that size, so you'll just have to do without. I said, well, yeah, but I'm a sergeant, so have we not got chevrons that we can just sew on it? No, we can't do that. Okay, forget it. Gave him the tunic back. Went back to the desk, sat in front of my computer, typed an email to Mr. Watton directly and said, I will not. This is one of those moments in your career that you should be proud of and should be feel passionate about. I said, and I said, I'm not coming. I will not be coming because stores will not provide me with a tunic with chevrons on. And I worked really hard to get my stripes, and I'm very proud of the fact that I've got my stripes and I'm a sergeant. I said, I am not turning up to a ceremony as a sergeant without stripes on the tunic. Forget it, I'm not coming. Lo and behold, within about 36 hours, a tunic landed in the control room with stripes sewn on it. Funny that, isn't it? So I did go to the presentation evening. My wife came along with me, and I had a tunic with chevrons. And when it was completed, I gave it back. And that was that. That set a ball rolling with tunics that continued for a couple of years yet, and was a big bugbear of mine. But yeah, no tunic for the long service medal. But eventually I got one, and I handed it back once that was all done. So 2011, there we go. That's it. Thanks, Jenny. But it is a bit like gowns at graduation. It's about it's ceremonial. And if you recall, just recently, this last year, for remembrance, I posted a photograph and a video because I offered to lay the wreath because of COVID and everything. I offered to lay the wreath at my local church, and Nantwich Police snapped my hand off and said, please do. So they delivered it to the house for me. And on the Sunday morning, I put all my uniform on and went and I laid the wreath in a very sort of carefully orchestrated COVID safe thing that they'd done, and threw one up and saluted and what have you. And that was a proud moment for me because it was probably, and has been, unless something really odd happens between now and the 17th of February, that will have been the last time that I formally wear my full ceremonial uniform. And so to do so in my own village with remembrance as well was fantastic and a lovely thing to do. But that's a nice thing. It's ceremonial wear, and I understand that it's not practical day to day. Although I have to say, I wore my tunic all the time when I was on section. An awful lot. Used to love going out on nights, and instead of having your jumper on, I'd have my tunic on and my black gloves, and I'd be ready, out in the van in a tunic. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. You feel the part. It's a bit like when you do what they call a VLP. You do a visit to licensed premises, and we used to do those at weekends where we did a 5 till 3 a.m. shift, and at 9 o'clock you handed over to the night group. So at 9 o'clock you handed over, 9:30ish by the time they'd paraded, but you hand over at 9:30, you ref, and then you went out, and the sergeants would say, I want you in plain clothes down there, I want you doubling up on that car and providing support to section, and you lot are all going on what they called the fun bus, which was just to go to fights and pub fights and all this of it, but we'd also do VLPs. And there's nothing quite like 8, 9 cops all getting out of a van and walking into a pub, and walking into the pub, round it, through it, and out another door, but with your great big custodian helmet on, and you stand up head and shoulders above everybody else. There's a real presence that comes with that uniform that says, blimey, the cops are here. Real presence. And if you're in your tunic as well, the dogs whatnots. But anyway, there we go. That's enough on uniform. So thanks for dropping in. That's 2011. Let's have a look at the list for tomorrow. Oh, 2012. What a year. Brings a few things in this year. There's quite a few things happened this year in 2012. So look forward to tomorrow. It could be quite a long broadcast tomorrow, but we shall see. Anyway, until then, thanks for dropping in. Great to have you here, and hopefully we will see you tomorrow for 33 years in 31 days, day 23, looking at 2012. Until then, take care, folks. Good night. See you soon.